February 10th, 2014, Burnsville Planning Commission meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Everyone in our viewing audience, staff, people in the audience. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Any changes from commissioners?
None from me, Chair.
Staff? None from staff. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion moved by Mr. Bradrick.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tahiri. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from the January 13th, 2014 meeting. Any changes from commissioners? Staff?
None from staff.
I would look for a motion then.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Singh.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bradrick. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, application for PMJ Burnhaven LLC for a planned unit development amendment for a liquor store located at 820 County Road 42 West. Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The application in front of you is a planned unit development amendment. The request is for a liquor store within the existing building at 820 County Road 42. The subject site, which I'll get to in a second, this is the Burnhaven Mall area. Super Target's located in this area. You'll see the subject site is outlined in red. Slumberland is located in this area. PMJ Burnhaven also owns surrounding parcels down here, but this is the subject parcel in question. The property and surrounding area are Zone B3, general business. They are also approved via planned unit development, or a number of planned unit developments in this case, dating back to 1976. Within the subject site, we have Godfather's Pizza, T-Mobile, Ulta Cosmetics, and a vacant tenant space, which is in question this evening. Retail uses within the mall are permitted via the B3 district. Liquor stores are specifically called out as conditional use, or in this case, may be approved by planned unit development amendment. As I said, there's a significant history here on the approvals and how the lot lines are configured. There is, so everyone's aware, there is shared parking and access agreements across these properties. So although the lot lines do look a little skewed, it does provide shared parking and access for everybody within the mall. When we're discussing PUD amendments, or PUDs in any case, staff always tries to point out the benefits and the deviations for the Planning Commission. In this situation, we're dealing with the space that has been vacant since 2009. The portion of the building was home to Linens and Things. They vacated the property back in 2009. There have been a number of proposals by the property owner and other tenants looking to go in there. For some reason, none of those have worked out, and it has been vacant for quite a while. Also, County Road 42 is a regional shopping corridor. Its intent and goal is to be a regional draw for the South Metro area. The proposed liquor use is consistent with the zoning ordinance and the conditional uses that are outlined in the ordinance. It's also consistent with the comprehensive plan to create a regional draw along 42 and maintain that with existing and new businesses. There are no deviations requested with the application. The zoning ordinance, zoning requirements are satisfied. I'll get to the floor plan in a second, but to give you an idea, again, the site we're looking at, Super Target runs here. There's a property line that runs along here. Godfather's Pizza is located here. T-Mobile Ulta Cosmetics, and the vacant space is significant in size. It's 28,000 square feet. Much of it is tucked in and behind Target, so it doesn't have a lot of front visibility, but there's a lot of square footage back there. So to keep this in mind, this facade faces south, and this wall faces north. So this line right here runs due north and south. I know that's skewed a little bit from how we normally see plans, but again, to put it in relation, Godfather's Pizza is here, T-Mobile's here, Ulta is here, and this would be the space occupied by Total Wine. The proposal, which you'll see in a second, includes an entrance off of this side. You'll see right at this corner is the adjacent Super Target. So again, much of the tenant space is behind Target, and here you can see Target runs all the way to the back. Here is another image. Ulta sits here. Right at this corner, there's a slight turn in the building or an angle, and this facade faces directly east. It does not face south. Ulta's got a southeast elevation. This tenant space, again, the entrance and the signage, all of that would be facing east rather than south. So let me jump back to some more details on the operation. Total Wine is a national retailer. They operate 100 liquor stores across the nation. They currently have stores in 15 states. They have 2 others in Minnesota besides the application you're looking at. We certainly look at the criteria to which the Planning Commission and Council analyzes conditional use permits. And we find the land use consistent with the zoning, consistent with the comprehensive plan. The retail is harmonious with the other retail occurring in the area. It satisfies the applicable zoning requirements. The parking is satisfied. The liquor store would not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, welfare. The project is designed and consistent with surrounding tenants in the shopping center and would not change the essential character of the area. These are all items as a staff level we reviewed and recommending to the Planning Commission. As I said, the parking has been satisfied. There are 869 parking stalls within the Burnhaven approval. That includes Slumberland, this property, and what's available to Super Target. With that, Commissioners, again, here is the exterior image. There will be glass added as a main entrance, ephes and stone consistent with the zoning requirements. Again, we're looking at currently a blank brick wall. The space was reconfigured when Alta went in. And again, the property owner has been pursuing tenants, but hasn't been successful in any of those. And thus we're looking at the application tonight. Staff is supportive of the application. It is a public hearing, Commissioners. Before I get into this, again, I just want to touch on one thing. Tonight we're looking at the land use request by the property owner. Certainly the discussion of the liquor store and Total Wine will come up as part of that. But again, we're sticking to the land use. The public hearing for the license application and the issuance of the license is done at the City Council level. There's a separate public hearing notified for that, and the council will take public comments on that time. Certainly, there's a lot of people in the audience, and they'll want to discuss these things, and we will take any public comments they may have. Commissioners, there are 2 conditions staff has included in their recommendation, and both get to the addition of trash enclosures for the property. Behind the shopping center, all of the dumpsters are back behind the building unscreened. Whether it's because of change of tenants and change of use and so forth, there are no screening requirements satisfied. Staff feels with the addition of this tenant and the improvements being made, this is a reasonable condition. I know the applicant is agreeable to this. They are working with all the tenants within the mall to make sure they come up with a plan that satisfies everybody's needs, and thus staff is giving them a significant amount of time to work through that once the weather warms up and improvements can be done. With that, Commissioners, I will stand for questions. The property owner also has representatives here, and we'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Slaney to start out with?
Just a couple.
Sure. Frederick.
Chris, we previously had a PUD amendment pulled from an agenda for the signage for the pylon out front. Can you kind of update us where we're at with that? Because there's nothing in here based on signage.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, PMJ had requested additional signage. Staff later found out it was for the Total Wine application, trying to get additional signage on that pylon sign. Through a number of conversations with the property owner, staff indicated we wouldn't be supportive of that. They did not want to proceed without a staff recommendation, so they've withdrawn that signage request. They've indicated they may bring it back at a later time, but the property owner would like to focus on the liquor license land use and has withdrawn the signage request.
One more, I'm sorry. Sure. The entrance into the store, and this is just kind of a question I have, is the front of it is kind of in front of Target, and when Target tore down the other store and built that one, they did kind of a courtyard thing there. And
Correct.
So does Target own that? Does the mall owner own that? What do they have to do there to get appropriate access into this tenant space?
Great question. Commissioners, Target owns this plaza or seating area, if you will. It is counted towards the Target green space calculations. There is, by ways of the PUD amendment, there is access through there. The property owner is working with Target, and they have an agreed on changes within that courtyard that would provide the necessary or the better access to the tenant space. They've done that in a way that doesn't reduce the green space, so Target's still able to satisfy their green space requirements and doesn't reduce any green space calculations.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I know that we are, before us is the land use. This application is for land use. However, to help me frame my recommendation, I have a couple of questions that I need answers for. Now, this liquor store, what's the nearest liquor store to the one in the application here that we have now?
There are two in close proximity. Probably the closest would be the Haskell store within Burnsville Marketplace. Actually, I'm sorry, MGM. Well, MGM is located in this building. Haskell's is in Burnsville Marketplace. there's a number in close proximity to this one.
For the benefit of the viewing and listening audience, can you tell us the distance?
Certainly. In this corridor, if you will, along the County Road 42 corridor, there is no spacing requirements. The council made that change to the ordinance a few years ago. I don't know if it was 2009 or 2010. They do have spacing limitations when you're not along the Burnsville or the County Road 42 retail corridor, but anything along this area near Burnsville Center. Costco has a liquor store. MGM is in this area. Haskell's is in this area. Farther down the road, we also added Byerly's added a liquor store a few years ago. So those spacing requirements in this area are not applicable. They still do apply outside this retail corridor, along with other requirements.
If I may ask a follow-up, I understand the city's position on spacing, how near the applicant's liquor store will be to the nearest existing one. But help me so I can frame my recommendation with distance. MGM is how far away?
MGM is probably within 1,000 feet,
And Haskell's?
within 1,500 feet.
Thank you very much. My second question, you have already answered the city's guidelines as to proximity of existing ones. So that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Slania. This is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to comment or ask a question, please step forward to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Frank Ball. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. I'm in St. Paul.
Thank you.
We represent over 1,500 off-sale retail liquor stores, which are located in all 87 counties of Minnesota, including several of the off-sale stores in your city. We recognize that this is a very hard issue to discuss, and we recognize it's a land use issue as well this evening. We'll have 4 presenters for you tonight, and their presentations will be rather short. We're deeply concerned about the applicant's ability to build a massive retail off-sale liquor store in your city, specifically known as the PMJ Burnhaven LLC Development Amendment for Liquor Store located at 820 County Road 42 West, also known as Total Wine & More, as the applicant. Of the 4 existing liquor stores in the Burnsville Center, within less than a half a mile from the proposed store, only one existed in 2009. The rest were approved since then. This rapid and uncontrolled growth should be slowed, and it's within the Planning Commission's authority to do so. You have done an excellent job in controlling and managing your sale of beverage alcohol to your citizens in Burnsville. And we think this is a very important decision that you're going to have to make tonight. And with that, I'd like to turn our presentation over to our representative that will give you some more details. Thank you.
If you could state your name and address, please.
Certainly. And is there an overhead camera for
Yes, there
materials?
is. I will set that up.
Thank you. My name is Bill Griffith. I'm at 1500 Wells Fargo Plaza in Bloomington at the Larkin Hoffman Law Firm, representing the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. And I will also state that we recognize that this is a land use issue. However, because your regulatory controls for liquor license locations, off-sale locations in particular, have distance and spacing requirements, we think the two are really intertwined and can't be separated and have a full discussion. And so Mr. Ball mentioned the pre-2009 condition, which is what I'm going to show to you.
Sorry, if I can interrupt. It
Please.
is right Where all your documents are.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm not going to have my notes shown there. Otherwise, there's no suspense.
And you can put that over here.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the help. So what you're seeing is a map, and it's maybe not hard to read, or not easy to read at this scale, but essentially it's showing you the pre-2009 condition and the spacing guidelines that were in place. And this is obviously the area that's affected around Burnsville Center. At that time, only MGM liquor was in that location. Okay, and so as the planner pointed out, just 1,000 feet next door is a large format proposal by Total Wine, next to a large format store for Haskell's. Behind that is Costco warehouse, which sells a lot of liquor, and we've failed to mention Cub Foods, and then of course Byerly's. You know the location of Byerly's. So if this goes through, you will have 5, many of them large format stores, but 5 stores within a very close proximity and 4 within a half a mile. And that's really our point, that your code and your conditional use permit provisions, the findings that you make, allow you to look at a balance of land uses, allow you to look at a concentration of a single land use. And in particular, when it's a highly regulated land use, such as liquor sales, that should be a consideration. Your own provisions, which I'll go through in some detail, also look at the economic welfare of the community and the economic welfare of adjacent properties. So all of this is fair game. So I don't want you to feel, based on your own code and comp plan, that it's pretty cut and dry and the door is shut as to this question, because we think it is an important consideration and one that should be in both applications, the land use application and the liquor application to follow. So I'm going to show you what resulted after the 2009 amendments that many of the stakeholders in this room participated in that discussion and thought they had understanding about what was coming. And the council at that time talked about amenities, value add, things that were not in the community. Obviously, there are large format liquor stores right within 1,000 feet on one side and 1,500 feet on the other. So that amenity, if you will, is well served in this area. What we gleaned from the record is that the council was interested in a Costco. The council was interested in a Trader Joe's if it would come to the community, or maybe a Whole Foods. But this concept of a large format liquor store providing a wide variety of labels is already provided for right in this immediate area. And we think that's an important land use consideration, not just a licensing regulatory function. And so what you're looking at now is this is the proposed location. We've talked about MGM. We've talked about Costco. We've talked about Haskell's. There's Byerly's on the edge of the area, and then Cub Foods. So obviously it makes the point that you're going to end up with a concentration of one land use and a concentration of a land use that is highly regulated both by your ordinances and state law. This is the Total Wine store in Bloomington. I think your planner mentioned that they have 2 locations. One is fully constructed in Bloomington, although they don't have a liquor license. That consideration has been deferred pending further investigation by the city attorney into certain issues that will come up in the regulatory discussion. But suffice to say that the applicant, in that case, built out a store, committing thousands of dollars, training employees, and then at the last minute said, we're going to come in for our liquor license and expect to get it. Well, the point again that I'm trying to make is if you don't have both sides of the discussion, if you essentially say, well, we're only going to talk about the PUD amendment and not understand the implications of licensing and regulating liquor sales in your community, you're going to have half a discussion. And so what transpired in Bloomington is they were ready to open the store, they had trained employees, and they said to the city authorities, as the applicant, well, now we have to send these employees elsewhere to work, and it's really working a hardship on them. And the point is, we don't think it's an appropriate thing to get the cart before the horse. I think these 2 things need to go together, and they're both sides of the same consideration. So the points that I would like to make, and I know that your city attorney is here, and I know that Burnsville does a good job of making findings, and I'm sure that you'll be advised on that, and as will the city council. So I want to go through very specific findings that are within your comp plan, your PUD ordinance. Okay, now I'm all right, because those aren't my handwritten secret notes. Thank you, Mr. Jamnick. So the first point, and actually this is kind of helpful, so I won't have to read it all to you. The first point is the comprehensive plan calls for a balanced land use strategy, and one that would. And now I'm looking at the CUP consideration as well. But first, the use or development conforms to the comprehensive land use plan. The use or development is compatible with the existing neighborhood. Well, we don't believe it is compatible to have 3 major large format stores within a couple thousand feet of each other. We think that's a bad consideration for your community. We understand that communities following the recession have been very interested in re-tenanting buildings. The market has changed. There's more demand. We think that it's appropriate to wait for the right use. As you may understand, this license is essentially coming from another location in Burnsville, and will essentially be transferred here. It's not really a transfer, but essentially you're losing a location somewhere else in the community so that you can have this concentration of large format liquor stores all right on top of each other. We think that is a valid land use consideration. And so the city's future land use guide plan says the plan's vision is for a balanced land use strategy that provides for a sustainable community. Again, we think one of these stores is probably not going to make it with 3 large format liquor stores all right on top of each other. And again, it isn't just about regulating competition. This is about fulfilling a vision for the city. The city had a very strong vision for your heart of the city. You have a strong vision for the Burnsville Center area. We would like you to, as stakeholders in this room, we would like to see you fulfill that vision. We're here to, my clients and the members of MLBA have invested in your community millions of dollars over many years to help you fulfill that vision. And so we are supporting your concept of a balanced land use strategy. The plan's objective is to maintain a balance of residential and business development, sustain the viability of the community to further enhance future growth, to make reasonable land use decisions to reflect the vision of the community. And so how you do that within the comprehensive plan is through findings. And here are the CUP standards, which I just went through. So the findings, in order to permit a conditional use permit, the city code requires that those findings be made. Certain conditions as detailed in the zoning ordinance exist. I think your planner took you through that. And the use or development conforms to the comprehensive plan and is compatible with the existing neighborhood. Now, we've made the point a couple of times, but I think it's a key point. The resulting density of stores would mean 5 off-sale liquor stores within less than a half mile of the site. Cub Foods, 0.4 miles. Haskell's, 1,200 feet, or 1,500. Costco, 750 feet. I may be a little off there. And MGM. In addition to the legislative purpose and intent of Title 10, the following language is found at the City Code Section 10.2.1. The purpose of this title is to implement the comprehensive plan, protecting Burnsville's tax base by promoting cost-effective development within the city, conserving the values of property throughout Burnsville, protecting landowners from adverse impacts of adjoining development. Okay? Again, we don't believe you can make those findings in this case. Standard number 4, the proposed use will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. By approving this PUD amendment, again, the Planning Commission would be recommending an unsustainable and excessive concentration of off-sale liquor store land uses, one otherwise that are otherwise restricted within your community. I think the points are well made, and I will pause now so I don't keep making the same point over and over again. But we do want to drive it home, and that is that you have this concentration. And nobody in this room envisioned that in just a few years after the 2000 amendment, you would go from 1 store to possibly 5 stores serving the same area. And also from a land use perspective, if you think about how they're dispersed otherwise, I'm going to look for the, is it Red Line that is the closed store now? Not Red Line, Red Hawk. Is that correct? Yeah, Red Hawk. Sorry. My apologies to Red Lion. That's number 12 there. As you can see, it's the furthest out, if you will, from the Burnsville Center area. So essentially, you're losing this liquor store serving this part of your community to plop it in the middle of probably the most highly served area within the community. Again, we think those spacing regulations make sense, and we believe that this approval would be against the City Council's intent in 2009. And those are essentially my comments. We consider this a serious matter. Our members are seriously concerned about this action, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you could just hang around and see if there's any questions
Certainly.
anybody may have.
I have one question.
Commissioner Tahiri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you had any study or any feedback from surrounding bar owners or restaurant owners, any positive, negative, any comments regarding this development?
Mr. Chair, members, I have not personally. I've spoken with the members that you see here, the stakeholders, if you will. I imagine others who are going to come to the mic could answer that question better than I.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify the statement you made about the liquor store that closed and swapping license. There's really no correlation between the two, correctly? We just happened to have an establishment close. There was nothing that we had to have one closed to be able to get this one in a balance in the city. I just wanted to clarify, because you said we essentially swapped licenses. Can we clarify that real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, the city does have a limitation on the number of licenses, and so if all the licenses are taken up by retail operations, there would be none available.
Okay.
But we also don't allow the transfer from one business to another in effect, as far as some cities used to allow the sale of licenses as a private sale. But in this situation, when Red Hawk goes out of business, that license becomes available under the city's regulatory framework. First come, first serve, that is available, so there is an application for that license that is now available.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just a further point. It's my understanding that Burnsville doesn't allow consideration for the transfer of licenses or the timing of licenses. So I think it would, on the regulatory side, it would be an appropriate inquiry whether there was consideration paid for the transfer of that license. But that's, again, a separate regulatory matter. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Julik?
Thank you, Chair. Just on that last statement that you made regarding, is the Red Hawk liquor store, that license is already vacated, or?
It's been, in effect, returned to the city.
It's been returned to the city, okay. And then, Mr. Griffith, a couple of questions on the, some of the things you brought forth earlier. In the first section, you pulled out some comments that I believe were from the conditional use, or excuse me, from the PUD section of the code. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then I think in the second section, it appears that you brought some items from the conditional use permit section of the ordinance. Mr. Slaney, there is no conditional use permit here. This is there?
No.
That's not the application.
That is not the application. Within the underlying land use, liquor stores are allowed via conditional use permit. In this case, the property owners applied for a PUD amendment. The city can look at it in either light.
So as we look at it, we can look at it in the context of a conditional use permit or not?
You can look at it in the context of a conditional use permit. That's not the action you're going to take, but certainly when you have an underlying zoning district, you look at the parameters within that. Similar to parking or building design, we'll look at the underlying criteria and pair that up against the application.
Okay, and then Mr.
May I
Griffith.
respond to that, please?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members, generally, and Mr. Jamek knows this as well as I, or maybe even better, having worked for the league, the general approach of cities is either to take an approach as if it were a rezoning or a CUP, and it's my understanding that this is not a rezoning, and so that is why we look through the CUP conditions as an appropriate inquiry into whether the PUD should be granted. So that's the reason that you see that there in our outline, but again, I defer to your city attorney.
Okay, so as we are, Mr. Jamek, as we're looking at it is it okay to apply the conditional use permit criteria?
You can certainly look at that as direction, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. You're not bound by that. We are kind of a hybrid situation. We are neither really a pure rezoning type city versus those that are a conditional use permit. The city does not process the PUD amendments the same way that we do a conditional use permit. The Planning Commission and the Council has more discretion in the PUD, quite frankly, than under the conditional use permit. But Mr. Griffith's citation or reference to the conditional use permit, because it is a use that's covered as a conditional use in the underlying zone, is something that can give direction to the Planning Commission and the Council in evaluating the proposal.
Okay.
Mr. Slania's staff report, for instance, summarized in the PUD details section, pretty much the bullet points without the labeling that are in our conditional use permit section as well as in the overall PUD section. So the short answer is we're kind of a hybrid. We probably are more of a rezoning overlay district than we are a CUP type of zoning ordinance.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then finally, Mr. Griffith, at I think in your third section in your report that you had on the screen, you referenced section 10 specifically of the ordinance. Could you state the title of that?
Approving this PUD amendment would be contrary to Title 10 of the ordinance, which I believe are the standards for issuing the PUD.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, Title 10 is the zoning ordinance.
Oh, that is the zoning ordinance, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier, I asked for guidance on the city's position regarding proximity of liquor business. Mr. Slania explained that I was concerned about the impact this total wine would have if it's approved on the other businesses. But when you look at the area where this store is going to be, if given approval, will be existing, it's a very busy shopping area with lots of stores, with lots of people coming in there to do business. And I've heard Mr. Griffith talking about the impact it would have on the other liquor stores, the five of them, right?
Four existing,
Four and
5 with total.
With this one, the existing 4 liquor stores. You know, in my opinion, I think the community decides which ones survive. I see it as an opportunity for the people of Burnsville to be given choices, and with choices, many choices, I always feel the consumers benefit. I don't see any reason why we should not recommend this application. I came in here this meeting with a very open mind, and my first couple of questions addressed the impact this application would have on the other businesses. And granted, if you have a new liquor store, it may have some impact, but I would let the consumers decide which one survive or which one close. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. We still obviously are in the public hearing yet, so is there any other questions yet for Mr. Griffith? Anything else?
One question.
Commissioner Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the square footage of this, of the facility?
Of the proposal, is it 26,000?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the proposed tenant space is 28,600 square feet.
And as far as the parking requirements and setback, they're all,
They're all satisfied, correct.
and the space is designed for how many occupants at one point in the store, basically,
right.
approximately?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, at this point, we don't have the construction drawings, the code analysis for the application. We do know it was retail, and it will continue to be retail. Certainly additional additional entrances will be added to access the store.
Yeah. Currently, I see only one entrance into the store, public entrance, am I wrong in that, sir?
Entrance would be limited or proposed at one.
Also, in the building, I see a education or classroom that teach or I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I'm looking at about 80 chairs in there. That assuming that one point we'll have 80 occupants sitting in that room. Are we accommodating all the ease access?
Correct. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, our inspection staff has looked at the floor plan, the bathroom requirements, the exiting, to make sure we're consistent with the building and fire code.
That would be up to code. They'd have to build it up to code, right?
Correct.
Sure.
And just one note on that, the tenant is looking at I believe they're calling it an educational room. It would be a classroom where they could host wine tastings or instructional classes on different things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, I appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Anybody else wish to? Please step forward with your name and address, please, sir.
Hello, my name is Dave Hauptman. I live at 14410 Holiday Court, Apple Valley, Minnesota. Excuse me, I'm suffering a horrible cold. I'm with Red Lion Liquors. I'm the general manager of their store. I've been with Red Lion Liquors since 1976. My family moved to Burnsville in 1964, so I've got a solid 50 years of being in this community just about every single day. I'll be brief. I echo with what Bill says. I believe I am a voice to liquor store owners and managers and workers in Burnsville. I was part of Burnsville, the liquor stores, when there was only 7 stores in town. And then when it came time to bring the ordinance up to date, we all heard the words vision, and the visions of the development of Burnsville were fabulous. I mean, we're part of the heart of the city. We were the first people to build down there, and we love everything about being there. We had built that store, made a significant investment. And when there was talk about other businesses, other liquor license coming to Burnsville, they had to redo the ordinance, and they, excuse me, they wanted to bring it up. They're trying to come up with a number of how many liquor licenses per people in Burnsville, and because the ordinance was out of date. So what we participated in the discussion of the ordinance. And I think my understanding was that in the end, they were going to have 12 liquor licenses. That's because the population of Burnsville was about 60,000. And so they figured one liquor license per 5,000 residents, which would make it convenient for the residents of Burnsville. You'd have lots of competition. I mean, 12 licenses is a lot of competition. So they were spread out around Burnsville. The ones outside the Burnsville retail area had to be freestanding buildings, and they couldn't be within 3/4 of a mile of another liquor store. So we thought, okay, this will work. And then the Burnsville Center was going to have their 5 licenses, 4 licenses, whatever was up there. So the vision at that time, what we thought was the vision, and the city council thought was the vision, that, you know, the licenses in Burnsville would stay where they were, and there could be a less restrictive area up by the city of Burnsville. So, and we got on board. We thought, okay, then this is a nice new ordinance. It'll let the current business owners have a level playing field and, survive, not just cut it up into tiny, tiny, tiny pieces of pie and just make everybody, starve to survive. But my worry is that by issuing this permit today for them to move forward with construction, maybe we should step back and let council look and see, is this what we intended for, another liquor license to be put up by the Burnsville Center area? I mean, we're down on Nicollet Avenue here in the heart of the city and won't be affected much by another liquor store up there. But what it does, it's not what I think was the vision when they changed the ordinance. Here you're going to have the eastern quadrant now of Burnsville without a liquor license, which could be inconvenience to the residents living out there. So my concern or my hopes would be that we could continue this until you get more direction from city council, is if that is what the ordinance change was intended to do, to keep it like this, or to bring, then will another liquor license move up there at another time, and then another one, and then just dense pack that whole area? That's not healthy for the industry. So I just like to say that. And
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment or have a question at this time? Anybody else at this time? Oh, or else? We'll please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Sure. My name is Mark Jacobson. The address is 80 South 8th Street in Minneapolis. I'm with the Lindquist and Venom law firm, and I'm here representing Minnesota Fine Wines, or Total Wine, as you've been referring to it.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
I want to make just a couple of quick points for you. First of all, we talked about 2 locations in Minnesota. There's been one decision so far on a license application, and that is in the city of Roseville, which approved a liquor license for Minnesota Fine Wines. And construction on that facility is going now. We expect to open in March. The worry here, I think, there's been discussion of the effect on existing businesses, but as I think you've begun to hear more and more, the issue there is competition. And Mr. Singh addressed that, I think, pretty well. That's the worry, is that the thing that would cause potential harm would be competition. And the question that raises is whether you're in the business of preventing competition. For all the reasons Mr. Singh talked about, I don't think that's the case. When you talk about the number of stores in one place, you have to wonder, I think, how sincere that argument is. Apparently, 4 stores was none too many. I suspect you didn't hear any objection from the Licensed Beverage Association or from others when those 4 stores came before you. But the notion that somehow 5 is too many seems to me to be a little too easy. And the final point would be, I think, to keep in mind that this is a regional shopping destination. And it's pretty clear what you've intended to do along that corridor is to create a regional shopping destination. And as a result, you've got a lot of big box stores of a variety of kinds. This would give the advantage of a big box store in the liquor area and wine and beer. And I think for the reasons that your staff has provided you and for some of the reasons you've discussed tonight, that would be a net benefit to your city.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. If you'd hold on just 1 minute, if anybody has any questions for Mr. Jacobson. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else care to step forward to comment at this time? Please state your name and address, sir.
My name is Kevin Bresnahan. I live on 17665 Vergas Avenue in Jordan, Minnesota. And I'm on behalf here, I've been in the liquor business for 40 years. I got out of it about 2 years ago. I used to, where Red Hawk is, I own the property at 2900 East Cliff Road. I ran it as a liquor store under Dakota Liquors from 1977 to 2004. So I've been in this business, been around Burnsville for a long time. And back way in the olden days, I was one of the first guys in the council to get the council to go a mile radius between stores. And the reason I did that back then is to have separation and fulfill to take care of all the neighborhoods. And at that time, they made me, I was actually in a strip mall that had moved out of there into a freestanding building that the city required at that time, and had a substantial investment in that building. And now that Red Hawk has terminated their lease with me and moved on, I was very much interested in going back into that business at that spot. So I think the city has an alternative here that I was interested in going into that spot, the same spot that I had 100% clean record in 30-some years, never a minor violation ever. So my thing is, I think you are putting it, and the original idea was so that we could service the whole city, and the liquor establishments could service the whole city in certain areas. And that was the reason way back when, and I still think it's the reason. Now, he showed the map where Red Hawk was, or where I was before that, and now you have no service in that area for the city. And I do think you're putting too many on top, even being in the business. I got out like 2 years ago and I had a couple knee surgeries, so I may be interested in getting back. And I've had discussions with the city about getting back into the business at that spot. So the only thing I'm saying is I think there was a time, and I still is think time, that they wanted separation for license to control the licenses. They are very, you know, I had to go through all the stuff for being a licenses, go to the city, go through the police stuff, all my employees. In fact, I had guys that still want to come back to work with me that worked for me for 27 and 24 years. So in that reference, I think you guys ought to really look at this. You're jamming everything down in one spot. You're not servicing the city the way it was supposed to. And that's my comment.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else at this time wish to step forward? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing at this time. Any additional comments from commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Thierry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question
Sure.
for Chris. What is the contractual leasing agreement of the space with developers or landowner as far as the duration of the lease or terms and conditions?
Staff hasn't been privy to any of that information. I know there's a representative for Total Wine and the property owner here. I don't know if they can get into those details or want to, but it's not something staff's aware of.
So we don't know whether they have 5 years or 10 years or year-to-year base.
As I recall, it was a long-term lease, more than 5 years, but I don't recall all the details of that.
Yeah, as we know, the space is almost 30,000 square feet space. It's very, very large spaces. So obviously that would be one concern that at least I have, that how the tenant's going to occupy the space for what terms and conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thierry. Commissioner Brederick?
Were you first? Oh, go ahead. Oh, I guess I'd like to clarify a couple things just for my own mind. I guess I might direct this to Chris or to in reference to the liquor license, help me clarify this. Currently today they don't have a liquor license, but that's not what's in front of us. We're talking about land use. And just to answer a couple questions, I'm assuming that at any point anybody could apply for a liquor license, and whoever completes the process and works through that with the city is on their own timeline, which is really a separate conversation from what we're talking about in reference to the PUD and the land use, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So the actual liquor license with what's in front of us today is, Chris, is kind of a completely separate issue and can be handled by a different body and a different process, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is, certainly, the Plan Commission has the ability to look at the conditional use criteria and the planned unit development criteria. The council is empowered to act on the actual liquor license.
Okay. That's all I have right now. I'll wait for some other comments.
Mr. George.
Thank you, Chair. Evidently, this application has struck a nerve among people. I think all the people who spoke gave some compelling reasons to go one way or another. The thing that struck a little bit of, that resonated with me a little bit is the balanced land use strategy. And I guess for me here, you've got the free market forces on one side, but you've got the balanced land use strategy here. And if I'm not correct, Chris, there's just one liquor license that is sort of available for people to come in and take at this point in time, or apply for at this point in time?
That is correct. There has been one liquor store closing and one application in for that license.
Okay, and so from that perspective, it looks to me that we're going a little bit against the balanced land use strategy here, in that we're putting all these liquor stores in one location, and there's no doubt it's a very high traffic retail location. I'm sure the applicant has done their market research and they feel something would be sustainable in this area, and so competition wise, I don't think we can really make one comment one way or another. I mean, that's not our role here, but our role is to look at the balanced land use strategy as well as a number of other things. And that's the one thing that really bothers me here a little bit, the statement that we will have, and it looks a little bit that way from the maps that were presented, that we're probably going to have an area of the city that is underutilized in this for this specific use, if you will, and it looks like we're going to have an area of the city that obviously has a lot of high traffic, but definitely will have a lot of stores that have the same use, that is something that's, I'm going to say, relatively highly regulated with if you compare it to other land uses within the community. So for me, I don't think, again, this is my opinion, I don't think we're achieving the conditional use permit of a balanced land use strategy by allowing this application to go forward. I don't feel that my position has anything to do with the sense of competition and so forth, because I mean, for me, I'm just going to stop for liquor. If I'm at Target, I'd stop at this one. If I'm at Costco, I'd stop at the Costco one, or over at the MGM one, depending on the variety that I'd want. So it's got more to do with loading that specific area with this specific function, and I don't think we would be achieving a balanced land use strategy. So that's my opinion. I'll turn it over to the other commissioners for comment.
Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one clarification. First of all, I would like to express my personal thanks to all the people who have come up and have given testimony on this matter. That's very much appreciated. Mr. I think Hoffman said that we are making a decision here. We are not making a decision on this matter. We are making a recommendation to the City Council. There will be a public hearing when the license application is made to the City Council. Then they will have a public hearing there also. And all we do is to make a recommendation to the city council. There are times when we make recommendation, and the city council have other ideas and have changed or have rejected our recommendation. However, I must say that most times they do consider our application very, very seriously. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. I just wanted to comment briefly. I want to thank everybody for coming forward and speaking on this issue. It obviously has competing interests. In looking at this with the competing interests, I try to keep in mind what we're doing, and I think Commissioner Singh has sort of highlighted that. We're making a recommendation to the City Council, and it's in a very narrow area of the use of the land. The liquor license obviously is I think a very important issue, but that's not really in front of us. And when I heard everything, what came to my mind, or what was important in my consideration, was a couple things. One is that for whatever reason, the City Council apparently doesn't have a spacing requirement in this area for liquor stores. They will allow, at least theoretically, up to their discretion, as many liquor stores along the 42 corridor as wants to be there. There is no minimum spacing between it. Then you also have the issue of coverage throughout the city, which I think is a valid issue and makes a lot of sense. The question, though, before us is simply, is this space conducive and appropriate for a liquor store at this time? And I think the answer is yes. In fact, it meets all the criteria. They're actually doing some upgrading in the sense that they're enclosing the dumpsters in the back, which is a benefit. And I think as Commissioner Singh said, or Commissioner Bradrick was asking questions, the licensure is not before us, and I think that is the main issue. All we're doing is recommending whether this is an appropriate location within the city code and the zoning to be a liquor store. And so I think under that criteria, it is. Now, whether it's appropriate or not, I think it's political, and it is the province of the council to make that decision of whether they want to stack another liquor store in this area or want more coverage where the old Red Hawk was. And I think that is a consideration for them. I don't have to make that. I just have to look and see if it is appropriate in this spot per the zoning, and it is. So I would vote for the recommendation, and the council is the appropriate place to make the arguments on the liquor license and whether 5 stores in that area is feasible and should be done. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Broderick?
Sure, thank you. I'd like to reiterate those thoughts too. I believe that I look at the land use, and I appreciate everyone's comments today that talked about some of the PUD and even when we referenced some of the CUPs. And in some cases, that's up to interpretation as to what's good and bad, and I think in some cases we've had issues in the past where bad for the neighborhood had to do with an auction going on in a residential neighborhood, something to that extent. So I believe that it's in what we're responsible for is to look at the land use, and I would be in support of the PUD. So I guess unless we have other discussion, I would be willing to make a motion.
Please.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval for the Planned Unit Development Amendment for a liquor store located at 820 County Road 42 West with the following 2 conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall construct a trash enclosure on site consistent with the codes no later than July 1st, 2014. And number 2, a building permit for the enclosure shall be obtained prior to the construction.
Motion moved by Commissioner Broderick.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That would pass 3-2. And this would go to the council.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, for everyone's information, the council is slated to hear this on April 22nd. That's a Tuesday evening. At that time, the council would hear both the land use and the liquor license application. At that time, the council holds a public hearing for the liquor license application.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
everyone for coming. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing application for Ebenezer Ridges for a two-lot subdivision to be known as the Arbors at Ridges Second Edition, and a planned unit development amendment for an addition to the existing Ebenezer Care Center located at 13820 Community Drive. Mr. Stadia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Let me have 1 minute to get to the appropriate diagrams. As with the last application, this is a planned unit development amendment. This also contains preliminary and final plat review for the Ebenezer Care Center addition. As indicated in the report, the subject site and the surrounding properties are zoned mix, PUD. They are all within the Ridges campus, which we're becoming more and more familiar with as these projects come through. Specifically, the Ebenezer campus is located south of McAndrews Road, south of McAndrews Road, and directly north of Prince of Peace Church. This would be the area where the Prince of Peace parking lot was added on to earlier last year, and in close proximity to the YMCA, the Prince of Peace Church and Fairview Hospital. The subject site is 3.77 acres in size. Currently exists as two parcels. You'll see here the memory care facility is 13810, and this is their lot. 13820 is the the care center area, and this would be the facility that will be added onto. Now, to accommodate the addition, there will be a lot line change, and I'll get to that in a second, essentially dividing these parcels more north and south rather than the odd configuration that we have here. As I've outlined, we're discussing the plat, we're discussing an addition to the building. The addition is to house 24 transitional beds. This would also include physical therapy area, serving kitchen, dining room, a separate entrance for this facility. I won't get into the details of the lot sizes at this time, but again, we are netting no change between these two lots. We're still totaling 3.77 acres. This northern lot will get smaller. The southern lot will get slightly larger. You're all very familiar with the campus by now. We've seen additions to the hospital and additions to Nicollet Clinic and all the plats that go along with that. As with the other application, we discussed the benefits and the deviations through the PUD. So we view this as a substantial investment into the care center, not only aesthetically from the outside, but as far as their service and the medical services they can provide to the community. This is a great improvement. These transitional care beds will help satisfy the need that Ebenezer has within their system. It also helps with needs that Fairview Hospital has for patients that don't need long-term hospital care. They do need some medical care, they do need some skilled nursing, but they do not need all the services that come with a hospital. So these transitional beds are not age restricted, and they're not really time restricted either. It could be somebody that's there for 3 days or somebody that's there for 3 months because of knee surgery or hip surgery or something like that, where they do need assistance, but their intent is to go back to their homes wherever they typically reside. We are not dealing with life-threatening injuries, but typically rehabilitation. And that seems to be, again, that seems to be a need that's within the Ebenezer system and at the hospital and other medical providers. Long-term, and I know the applicant may get into this, long-term, the inside of the care center needs some attention. It needs some updating and needs some improvements. The addition that we're discussing here provides swing space so that the residents within the care center could stay in this transitional area for a length of time while their segment of the care center is being remodeled. It helps them with displacement, keeps everyone under the same roof, but then gives the care center the ability to make some improvements and some updating. That would take a few months. Once that is complete, then these 24 beds would be open to new patients, new customers that would be coming in. Lastly, when we discuss the benefits, we are still within the total green space allowed for this site and within the total campus. That dates back to 2003 with the most recent PUD amendment. The deviation is one deviation being discussed with the application, and let me outline this visual aid. Community Drive is right here. Prince of Peace parking lot is here and at the bottom of the page. This is the existing care center. This is the memory care facility. And this right here is the building addition. So it does come out from the care center. It moves towards Community Drive. The applicant is requesting a 1-foot setback deviation. The required setback from this dash property line right here is 10 feet. That's what the ordinance requirements are for a side yard setback. The applicant is requesting that portions of this wall be at 9 feet rather than 10 feet. This helps them with their internal geometrics and how the addition aligns with the existing care center. And we can get into the details of that in a little bit. So again, there is one deviation with the request. In the report, I've broken down the lot sizes and the green space for each and how those change. What's important to know is the existing green space for these two properties is 37.1%. The proposed is 34.4%, and they are allowed to come as low as 32%. So they are within their green space requirements within that PUD. We'll also discuss parking briefly. The total visitor parking provided is 56 stalls. The required visitor parking is also 56 stalls, so the applicant is satisfying that. While I've got these images up, this is a 17,000 square foot addition. Again, it is pushing the building to the east, so it is closer to Community Drive. The addition is single story, and it does have underground parking on it. The total, prior to the addition, the care center is 3 stories, 58,000 square feet. Again, that includes dining, kitchen area, a large area for loading and receiving goods as they come in. So it is a substantial building. The care center is also 33 feet tall. You'll see this on the far right and the far left sides. So this is the north elevation. This is what you would see if you were in the parking lot looking south, looking towards Prince of Peace. This is the elevation you'll see. This is the east elevation if you were along Community Drive looking at the front of the building. And this is the south elevation if you were in the Prince of Peace parking lot looking north. You'd see the existing care center on the left and the single-story addition in front of you. The exterior is rock face block and ephes, significant amount of glass. The design requirements are satisfied, and the building's well designed, trying to give somewhat of a warmer appearance than if you've driven by the care center. It is it's unique in its architecture, and it certainly would benefit from this scaling up and being compatible, making it more inviting from a guest point of view. Getting to the parking, you'll see here there's a significant amount of surface parking. This is the existing conditions. There are 80 stalls up on this parking lot. And again, in this area you'll see is where the addition would come out. There's one access point off Community Drive. That is not changing. The reconfigured parking looks something like this. Again, access would remain. Here's the main entrance to the memory care facility with parking available here. This is the main entrance to the care center. That would not change, and there's also parking available here. And then this is the main entrance to the, I'm calling it the transitional bed area or the addition, and there is guest parking here. To accommodate a lot of the stalls that were lost in the addition, the applicant is proposing all the stalls underground, and I believe that is 33 stalls underneath the addition. All of these will be open to guests and visitors of the facility, not just to the care center, but also to the memory care facility. So in this concept, the applicant is recouping some of those lost visitor stalls. These will be more convenient with winter weather, convenient for visitors that may be staying there more long term than running in or out the same day, and should provide a better product. Again, that is the visitor parking calculation. All of the employee and staff for the whole campus park on the Prince of Peace parking lot. That is a long-term easement that the two property owners have in place, and actually from a staff perspective, there are secured entrances on the west sides of the building, in the back, somewhat tucked into the hill, and this is where all the employees and staff enter the building. So it really frees up everything on the east side of the building, everything that's available from Community Drive for visitor and guest parking. Apologize, Commissioner, as I just want to make sure we've discussed the main points of the project. Here is a look at the addition. Again, you can see the edge of the existing care center right here, and everything in this area is the addition. The 24 beds are along the perimeter. So there is all the beds are along a perimeter wall with an exterior window. The internal space is for physical therapy, staff offices, dining, and the service kitchen. Commissioners, staff is supportive of the request. The zoning is consistent with the comp plan. There is one deviation. Staff feels that is reasonable considering the balance of the project. And that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Slanahan.
I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Pierre?
Thank you, Chair. Chris, I'm looking at the site plan and entrance to the parking. Mm-hmm. As you drive in, there are two-way in and out into the parking. And once you're in, there's still two-way going north, but is it one-way going south? Because I see the arrow is only showing one. Does that create any... I'm a little concerned that would create confusion of people get in, which way is one way, which one is two ways.
Certainly. Both traffic circles are one way once you're, I guess, into the site far enough. In this situation, it's rotating this way. In this situation, it's rotating this way. There is a little bit of two-way traffic. From a staff level, we discussed that. We are dealing with a very, very low trip generating use. If it was retail or restaurant or something like that, there would be concerns, but in this case, we've got guests or visitors that may be coming here multiple times, hopefully not too many times, but hopefully they're familiar with the site. So.
I guess my concern is a bit about public safety here. Once you, are they going to be a stop sign there not to enter to the south drive-through? Anyway, for public to be aware of not getting in a one-way.
Certainly. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's a good point. Staff has brought up the signage question with the applicant. They know they need to be cognizant of that, not only for the circulation through here, but directing new visitors down to that underground parking so that if these surface stalls fill up, people know there's additional parking. That signage package hasn't been completed yet. I think the applicant can address it a little bit, but I do know that's something we'll be looking for with the building permit.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Commissioner
Chris, I appreciate all the background. It's good when we think about everything with the campus. I do have just a quick question on, in our background recommendation where the staff recommends that we approve this, typically below that we'll see any listed deviations. And in the recommendation section, the deviation for the setback's not mentioned here unless I'm missing it somewhere.
No, that was just a formatting error from staff. It is something that should be included in the report. The project got so lengthy, I forgot to add it at the end.
And so I just want to clarify, the deviation is just 1 foot, and it's against the southern property line, correct?
The southern property line, which...
up against the street. It's not up against Prince of Peace. It's against that side street that takes you into the parking lot, correct?
Actually, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if I can just confirm that is private property owned by Prince of Peace.
Okay.
So this is church property. It is a driveway accessing the rest of their site.
And I'm sure we've done this, but they've obviously been notified and are well aware of the deviation that's proposed this evening up against their property.
Correct.
Okay.
Staff has not received any comments back from them.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, back to that deviation, the setback. Now, it's, the ordinance calls for a 10-foot setback.
Correct.
They're requesting a 9-foot setback.
Let me rephrase that. They are requesting, yes, a 1-foot deviation, a
1 foot
9-foot
deviation.
setback, correct.
And the staff is okay with that. That's not going to create any problems there.
Correct, and also, Commissioners, it is not for the total length of the building. The building, I don't know if any of these images are clear enough, but the building does jog in and out. So there are portions that satisfy the 10 feet. There are portions that need the 9-foot.
And back to the green space too, you said that there was a slight deviation, but it's within the area of acceptable.
Correct. Commissioners, although the addition takes up a lot of the parking lot, there is 4,000 square feet, give or take, that is eaten up by the addition. So that reduces the green space, but they're still in compliance with their obligation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Julich? Thank you, Chair. So it looks like in and of themselves, they meet the criteria for green space, but they've brought the overall, I don't know if it's an overall PUD or their overall district below the 40% minimum requirement with this
Correct.
application, right?
Commissioners, that occurred with the hospital addition. They actually dropped to 39.9 and change. This did bring them a few thousand square feet lower, but not substantial when we look at the total campus.
So how do we, it's difficult to how to treat that because, well, we don't know how that can be divvied up within the parties to the campus.
Correct. Other than the chart that staff is, or the spreadsheet that staff is really keeping track of, we're trying to keep everyone to their allocated portion. It just happened, really, the biggest green space drop was the reconfiguration of Fairview Drive. That was the addition of right-of-way and some other changes that did bring it just under that 40%. Staff feels this is reasonable.
Is there any plan to somehow get the overall site back up to the 40% guideline or goal or minimum?
Not at this time. To be honest, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Julich, at this point, there's still vacant property and expansions to be had. I feel like the campus will end up at or above that 40%, but nobody has looked long-term.
So the private there's certain parcels that haven't been developed, and those aren't included in the overall cap. You're only including the developed parcels in the cap.
They are included in that. They are allocated to have a certain amount of development on them that may not happen.
Oh, so there's already some reserve.
There may be some cushion in there that's built in.
Okay. All
Or
right.
some cushion in there that may occur, I should say.
And then the report is a little, maybe I misunderstood, but the report seems a little bit inconsistent with your verbal explanation. The report seems to indicate this is targeted at, I'm going to call this longer-term care, but not intense for like rehab and such. But are they also going to be using it for, but then you also mentioned they were going to potentially be doing some additional refurbishment in the rest of the building, and they would use this space to move some of the existing
Correct.
patients
And I know the architect on the project can speak to that much better than I can. They are going to use, once the addition is complete, for a certain number of months, they are going to utilize that space to help accommodate the improvements or the updates to the care.
So they'll take existing patients, but longer term, it's the use that
Yes.
you.
That
okay,
has a
all right.
specific start and end date. Once that's complete, they will open it up for new patients.
Okay, I understand. Just a little bit, it's a little bit confusing for me. Okay, I understand. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Slania? Thank you.
Mr. Hillgardner's here too. I don't want to leave him out if there's stormwater questions or traffic. Mr. Chair, Eric Reiners is here also. He is the architect on the project and can answer your questions.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Reiner? Anybody? Okay. This, do you want to make us any, provide us with any information before we open the public hearing? Mr. Reiners? Sure, come on forward. If you give us your name and address, please.
Absolutely. My name is Eric Reiners with Spirides Reiners Architects in Bloomington, and I'm sorry for clearing the room.
Yeah.
We've been working with Ebenezer on this campus for over 4 years now, and we actually began planning and programming for this addition back in 2010. In the interim, we've completed the assisted living, the new assisted living facility across the street, just south of the YMCA, and the conversion of the existing assisted living building into memory care, which has been very valuable for Ebenezer to continue serving its clients. And to answer your question, yes, the TCU is primarily for short-term care to help people transition from injury, surgery, or their medical case back home, ideally. But upon its completion, it will be used just temporarily as swing space, while the care center, the existing structure from early 70s, is renovated. And so we'll be moving some patients into the new TCU wing, renovating the wing they were exited from, and then moving them back. And then once that process is complete, the TCU will be used for transitional care. There was one question I wanted to address on the site, and that is site signage or wayfinding. That package has not been completed yet, but it will be important because of all of the uses that this small site houses: memory care, child care, adult daycare, the care center itself, the original long-term care facility, and of course now the new transitional care wing. So wayfinding will be an important package, and we're going to work closely with Ebenezer and their signage consultant to get that ironed out, and it'll be, of course, submitted to staff upon completion. So that's it. If you have any other questions for me, let me know.
Sure, thank you. Any questions, anybody?
Commissioner
Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. So, looking at the floor plan, what I see here is permanent. There is nothing, no component of this construction is temporarily going to move around to expand or shrink. This
No,
is
not at all.
permanent plan. And it's
Absolutely. The 24 beds have been determined to be a critical need in the region. The market analysis shows that there's a significant shortage of transitional care in the area, and so those 24 beds will be dedicated to transitional care. And the therapy areas, occupational and physical therapy spaces, and therapist offices are an important component of not only transitional care, but of for the long-term care patients as well, and they'll be utilizing those facilities. So no, this is absolutely a permanent addition.
Thank you. I have a question on the elevator. Is that the only one elevator being used for public, for staff, for equipments, or freight elevators? And
There is one elevator in this wing, and it just connects the parking level to the transitional care level. There are 2 elevators in the existing care center that service all 3 floors within the care center.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing at this time. Anybody that has any questions or comments, please step forward at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Any comments at this time from commissioners? or other additional questions? Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's interesting to see the development of this area from the time we started with the assisted living and all the development has gone on here within the past year or so. I think Ebenezer is indeed a very good company to work with staff, and I think staff has expressed that the way they present their materials and the way they work with staff. I would like to commend them for the way they've been dealing with the staff and the city. This is as the architect just said, I think this addition will provide much needed care for people who need that, because the survey has shown that there is need for this kind of service in our community. And I'm glad that it's happening right here. So I will support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Any other comments, or I'll entertain a motion?
I will move, Mr. Chair. I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the application by Ebenezer Ridges for a two-lot subdivision to be known as the Arbors at Ridges Second Edition, and a planned unit development amendment for an addition to the existing Ebenezer Care Center located at 13820 Community Drive.
Motion by Commissioner Singh, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Talley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that passes 5-0. And this will go to the council on February 18th, I believe.
Next week, Tuesday.
Thank you very much for
Good luck.
coming in. Thank you. Good luck. Next item on the agenda is any updates, commissioners, any updates, anything?
None from me, Chair.
All right, thank you. Staff?
The only update would be the tentative agenda for February 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Slania. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bradrick.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that passes 5-0. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.